Terry was part of the first full class that we recruited. He played on a team that was the #1 high school team in the country that year, and down Southwest. And he came in at the same time Dominic and Terry and Lamar and Derek Floyd. And the thing I remember about Terry, and I told Mike the other day, when we, most of the guys that come to University of Georgia at that time and now, you ask them what they want to do and they say they want to go to the next level. And his senior year, the year that we went to the Final Four, we're playing in New York, we're playing in Syracuse, and we're playing the Beast of the East, which at that time was St. John's, and they were seeded 1, and Ohio State was there, and North Carolina was there, and St. John's was 1, Carolina was 2, Ohio State was seeded 3, we were seeded 4. Well, we played St. John's, and Terry gets, and Mike, you can help me on this, but I thought it was like 26 and 11, and what was it?
It was 26 points, 20 career high, 27 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks, 3 steals.
And that's a pretty good line. I mean, better than that. Okay, well, we win the game. So we're going to be playing Carolina in the next game. So beginning of the second half, Terry gets in foul trouble with about 2 minutes gone by in the half, and I put Richard Corn in the game. And everything clicked for us. We were shooting the ball well. They were playing man-to-man, and we were able to handle their man-to-man. And Terry never got back in the game. Never got back in the game. Now, here's a guy who wants to go to the next level. He just had a fantastic line. And he never said anything negative. A lot of guys would have been going into the locker room complaining, well, hey man, you're messing me up. Why didn't I get in the game? Why didn't I get in the game? And what you found out about Terry, all he was is pumped up that we were able to win, which would put us in the Final Four. Kind of a sidebar on that, we would have the team out to eat on a number of occasions, and Willie and Rod probably remember that. So we're having ribs, and Terry gets in the front of the line. Now, on the court, he's a team player. If you ask him to guard the other guy's toughest guy, he guards him. He had to go on the floor, he'd go on the floor, he rebounded the ball, he wasn't selfish. He was a great guy to coach. But once he stepped off the floor, it was a different story. So he's in the front of the line, and he gets all these ribs, and he took so many. And how many pounds did we have?
55
How many?
65.
55 pounds of ribs. He took enough where 2 guys didn't get any. And then so off the floor, team on the floor, it was team, not me. But it was going through the food line, it was me, not team. And so after that, Terry ended up going last when he had the team over. Another story, I'm going into the office one day. I stopped by Dunkin' Donuts to get a couple donuts and some coffee on the way to come over here to the facility, and it's at like 6 o'clock, and I see Fair in somebody else's car. He was driving, probably his girlfriend's. Anyway, I see him down there, Baxter and Millage, I guess it was. And so I tell the trainer when he comes in, have him come up and see me. And so he comes up there, and I said, well, I saw you this morning. You know, about 6 o'clock, and he looks at me and says, "Coach, what time's curfew over?" Hey, but one thing about being, a really good player, if your teammates like you, you know you're a good guy. Because really good players get a lot of attention, they get a lot of publicity. And that means they live with, Melinda and I have talked a lot about chemistry. And I think we come to agree on that chemistry is developed off the floor just as much or more than it is on. Because when practice starts, a coach can be in control. I mean, if a guy misses somebody, doesn't hit him, you say something to him, that guy, next time, look, this takes place, look over here, whatever. But off the floor is where teams really bond. And Terry was part of one of those teams. And he was a big part of that. And, he's the second one off of that, second starter off that team who's not with us anymore because Lamar passed a couple of years ago. And everybody in that era that played with him is definitely going to miss him. The players, the coaches, managers, trainers, and so he was a special guy. And so are these two. So if you got questions for them or for me, then we'll take it from here.
Reggie, any question?
This is 30 years since the '90 SEC championship team, and it remains the only regular season title. We've had visiting coaches come in here and talk about what a great job this is and what a great place this is and the talent, et cetera. What makes this so difficult in terms of reaching that level of success at Georgia?
Well, it's certainly different than when we came here. I thought it was a really great opportunity. It was a good job then. I think it's a better job now. Facilities are so different. One of the times that you get better is out of season. And now we've got as good of facilities as anybody in the country. I don't think Georgia, over the last X number of years, lost any player because of facility. The first day I really started recruiting was on a Saturday morning. We had the announcement, the press conference on Friday, and I forget the date, but it was at the end of March and right before the tournament at the Final Four. So I get here, the air conditioner hadn't been turned on yet, and so I got the window open, and it looks out over the barns. And I got Jeff Thomas, and some of you might remember Jeff. He was from New York, and I get him on the phone, and I'm talking to him. And some of the cattle out there start mooing. He says, "Coach, what's that noise?" It's a bunch of horns over there. And which was true, but it was four-legged horns and not automobile horns. So we couldn't use this facility in the off season, so we go down to Stegman, and they got 4 courts down there, and we couldn't reserve one because they were open to all the students. And so, I mean, if we had reserved a court and 2 guys are out there working on their outside shot or whatever, the university is going to get criticized. And so, our guys would go down there and they'd play the pickup games, and some guy over here thinks he ought to be starting on the varsity, so he wants to get in the game. And anyway, it wasn't a real good facility to try to improve your game. That's different. So facilities have really improved. And once you get that, it's all about players. I mean, you have to get good players. I mean, if you don't have good players, I don't care how you coach. All that you're going to have is, and so I don't know if that answers your question, but you know, ask these guys some questions, and you know, because once you get retired, you can talk a long time. You know, I mean, so you know, so these guys are still working. So
You're so good at it, though, Coach. You're so good at it.
For Rod, Willie, can you talk about what it was like to play for this guy, number one? And Rod, you were part of the '90 championship. You were really close in '87, Willie, and right thereafter. Can y'all answer the question that he asked before? Are you surprised that here we are 30 years later and Georgia hadn't notched another one for SEC regular season title?
It's all about getting the players, like Coach said. He hit it on the head. The facilities that we had back then, you know, I was talking with John coming in. I remember walking out for a game, and it used to be so cold. You know, you could, you know, just feel everything in there, just feel all the air. But once you get the facilities together and guys start recruiting quality players, they're going to enjoy this. You know, there's no better place to be going to school at than the University of Georgia. This is a family atmosphere, and once these facilities get in place the right way, the way they are now, it's going to attract a lot of the top players from around the state.
Rod?
Well, kind of going off of what they said, I guess the hardest part in today's society is kids look towards themselves. It's more a selfish thing. They look towards the NBA and programs like Kentucky and Duke, and you know, programs that promote them, where they don't have to do as much, and then they can take that next step. Really, in my opinion, it takes one. And getting Anthony Edwards, I think, was a big step for the University of Georgia, because once you have that one, then the next one, you know, can kind of go on from there. I think that was a huge win for the University of Georgia basketball program. Kind of put us on the map, kind of separated us from Tech, which traditionally has been the school for basketball in this state. Coach Durham, what he did at the University of Georgia was bring in a lot of the top players in the state of Georgia, and I think Coach Crean, by signing Edwards, made a big move towards that. And I think, you know, within the next years, and not just Edwards, but some of these other kids are really improving. Georgia went to the Final Four the year after Dominique left, and those guys kind of picked it up. And Coach mentioned role players and stuff like that. Some of these other kids up underneath Edwards are really good players. And so I think that bodes really well for the University of Georgia basketball program.
Piggyback on what Rod said, if you all look around the country at the amount of players the other players on the other team, I think throughout the whole SEC, you know, each SEC team has a quality player from the state of Georgia. And to make us more competitive, we got to keep those guys at home.
Yeah.
And you know, the more of them stay home, you know, the better this program would be.
That Auburn team last year was filled with players from the state of Georgia. And so, I mean, that just shows that it can be done. We just got to keep the players here in the state. I mean, it's full of basketball talent. We just got to be able to keep them here.
And the problem with this record was we couldn't keep guys in school or guys getting hurt. You know, I know my '87 team with the loss of David Dunn, which was a powerhouse inside, and missing him and a lot of guys that, you know, didn't make the grade. You know, I thought, you know, Coach had a great chance with that team, and we went a long way that year. They call it the Miracle Team, but if David Dunn wouldn't have went down and we wouldn't have lost Tony Mack and Patrick Hamilton, we would have went a long way.
Yeah. That was the '87 year.
Right.
Willie came here in '85, and we had a really good team in '85. He was a freshman, and we were one basket away from winning the conference. If we had won that game, we would have tied LSU for a conference championship, and we got beat on the road at Tennessee by one. I think we had Cedric Henderson, who was a phenomenal player, probably the best player that nobody remembers. In that game, I think he got 36 points and 17 rebounds. And we get beat by one up there, but Willie was part of that team. And that team goes to the NCAA. In the next year, would have been 86, we go to NIT. And the year he's talking about was 87, and we lost Dunn, who was like 6'8", 225. He had stress fracture. He was out. Tony Mack, who was our leading scorer at the time, he forgot to wait. You know, he wasn't eligible. Pat Hamilton was eligible under the NCAA rules, but wasn't under the SEC rules. We miss him, so we're missing our leading rebounder, our leading scorer, and our best defensive player. And so we end up finishing third in the league that year. And that's when Willie came into his own. And he's like 6'7", 6'8". And then the next year in that's 87, 88, we win 20, and he's all conference and ends up on the Olympic team. And as a first round draft pick, San Antonio, I think, was it 9th? 10th. Sure wasn't 8. But, you know, Willie's career, and then, you know, in the NCAA, we're going against Kansas State out there, and they beat us in overtime when Heron gets a bad call. And they call for going over a screen, and they beat us in overtime. They had a guy named Mitch Richmond who ended up going in the NBA too, and Dana Altman. So some of you will or will not know who he is. He's now the coach at Oregon. He was a coach at a junior college in Missouri, and so Kansas State coach hires him to come be his assistant. So he gets Mitch Richmond and another guy named Kennedy. And Richmond gets 35 in the second, and for the game, Willie gets 37, and we end up losing by 2 there. Now, you know, this is just a little background on Willie. Over here, these 2 guys played on the same team, I think, when you were a freshman, and Willie was a senior. And so, you know, Rod was a rookie, and he played some. And this to give you an opportunity how versatile Rod was. Is it that next year we come up there and we got Elmore Spencer in the lineup along with Marshall Wilson and Alec Kessler, and we start off pretty good, and then all of a sudden Elmore gets hurt, so we take a 6'11" guy out of the lineup and we put Rod in, and so, you know, we have to change the offense that we're running. And so then we do, and Rod goes into that position. And now you've got to play in the high post, and we're missing Elmore. So, you know, that's probably in, I guess, 88. And then 89, we didn't have a very good year. I think we ended up losing 1 less than we won. And then the following year, you know, Rod would have been a junior, and he and Laterra were in the backcourt, and that's the year that we're talking about, 1990. And they got Shaquille down at LSU, and LSU's actually favored to win. We go down there. Laterra Green had gotten hurt, and so starting guard doesn't go down there. At halftime, we're down 17. With about 3 or 4 seconds to go, Rod goes up for 3, gets fouled. Now, if he's got to make 3 to take it to overtime. He steps up there, 1, 2, 3, all go down. We go overtime. With 57 seconds to go in the game, Shaquille's on the line and they're up 7. With about 6 seconds left in the game, we're on the line and we're up 5. And we may have started to hack a shack because of the rest of the game we just fouled Shaquille. time passes, they come back here, we're down 17 at half. That time, we come back and win the game. We lose to Tennessee, we go down to Auburn and win by double figures, 14, 15 points. And we pick, you know, Rod plays on, he's on a team that went back-to-back tournaments in 90 and 91. And so, you know, we had a pretty good stretch in there. And then Tubby comes in and does a good job, and then he leaves. And if Tubby had stayed, we don't know exactly what would have taken place. In my thought, it would have been more positive than anything else. And then it got into one coach, and then the next coach, and the next coach, and the next coach, and it didn't have a lot of consistency until Coach Fox got here, and he was here for 9 or 10 years. And I think Coach Green will be here for a while. And he's recruiting players. But one guy's not going to do it. You know, Edwards gets a lot of publicity because they invented the star system since Dominique was a player. You know, Edwards is a 5-star player. Everybody says he's the greatest player that Georgia's had since they initiated this system. Now, I'm biased about Dominic, but for Dominic, he was playing with better players than Edwards is playing with now. I mean, I'm not criticizing those guys. I'm just telling you the truth. I mean, you know, Edwards puts it on the floor, and somebody comes off of him. You pitch it over there, and they go 2 for 23 from the 3. Well, pretty soon, Edwards gets over on the side, and somebody breaks down. Edwards' man's not coming off of him. So my point is, you know, we had pretty good role players. I mean, year we had Jody Patton coming off the bench. I mean, I don't know exactly what we shot that year, but one of those years we shot 42% from the 3-point line. That ain't bad. You know, I mean, if you know, you shoot 4 threes and you get 12 points, you know, out of 10 trips down the floor, you're doing pretty good. So anyway, you asked that question, and that's a long answer.
Willie, I just wanted to kind of get your take on this year, Georgia Tech. You've been talking, you know, you guys have talked about Edwards a little bit. Just what you see from the program right now, kind of some of the issues you see that are going on, and how do you think the team may do going forward?
They're young. I was just thinking about the point Coach made, you know, about people understanding basketball, you know, with the amount of attention that Edwards gets, you know, someone else got to step up. You know, he can make the game a lot easier for a lot of other people, but you got to have those players that are able to make plays. You know, like Coach saying, if you're the star player, you're going to create a lot of opportunities for somebody else, and those people that he's creating an opportunity for have to knock down shots, have to create something else. But they're very young, but I see a lot of energy out in them. When things go wrong, they still play hard. You know, they just need some leadership, somebody step up and lead the team. But when you're young, it's hard. You know, I like to see them put the ball on the floor a little bit more and attack the rim instead of taking a lot of threes. You know, threes gonna come when you attack the rim. I like to see them be more aggressive at that. But overall, it's a lot of talent out on that floor.
Time for 2 more questions.
So, I wish you'd let me get 20 shots up like these guys. Man.